The first sound is a sharp crack, so sudden it slices through the quiet like a warning shot. And I freeze as Lena, 28, female, olive-toned skin, dark wavy hair sticking to her cheeks, whips around with wide, startled eyes. Her phone lies fractured on the table, the screen glowing like a wounded thing. She forces a smile and whispers, "Don't be jealous," but her voice trembles at the edges, and something in my chest tightens. Rain slams against the window, drumming faster than my heartbeat. Aaron, 30, male, light tan skin, short black hair, damp with rain, steps forward, but the fear in her posture grows. Her hands shake as she hides them behind her back, like she's afraid of what they reveal. Would you forgive someone if the truth was worse than the lie? The storm deepens outside, but nothing is louder than the silence stretching between us. She looks past me toward the dark hallway, as if expecting something, or someone, to emerge from it. The door closes behind me with a soft thud that feels like a warning I didn't hear in time. Lena avoids my eyes, shifting her weight as though the floor burns beneath her feet. The rain grows louder, hammering the glass like a reminder that something outside wants in. I ask her again what happened, and her answer comes too easily. A slip, nothing more. But her voice cracks, and the lie cracks with it. Aaron steps closer, watching the way she clutches her sleeves, how her breathing falters. What if betrayal was the only way to survive? The storm presses against the walls, but her silence presses harder, shaping a fear I can't name. Lena moves around me as though proximity itself might break her open. She keeps touching her wrist, the place she hides her stress, and every motion feels rehearsed. I ask again what frightened her, and she finally looks at me, eyes glossy and unfocused. She says she's overwhelmed, that work is complicated, but the lie sits heavy between us. Her voice is steady, but her shoulders tremble. Outside, thunder rolls across the sky, but her silence feels heavier than the storm. Every detail, every gesture, every pause tells me she isn't just afraid. She's hiding something she thinks might destroy us. I sit on the couch, dripping rainwater onto the fabric, trying to breathe evenly while she leans against the bookshelf, hugging herself. The storm outside growls, lightning flashing briefly across her face, revealing fear she can't hide. She asks if I trust her, but the question feels like a test she already thinks she'll fail. Her voice shakes as she insists I'm imagining things, yet every tremor exposes the truth she's trying to bury. Trust doesn't collapse in a single moment. It wears down piece by piece, just like this. I watch her, wondering if the woman I love is slipping through my hands. The room grows colder, the kind of cold that isn't from the storm, but from the truth hiding beneath her silence. Lena's fingers dig into her sleeves, her breath shaky as she lifts her gaze to meet mine. Fear pools in her eyes, mixed with guilt and something deeper, something she's terrified to name. I ask her one last time what she's hiding. She steps closer, almost touches my hand, then jerks back as though the contact might break her. The distance between us widens even as she inches forward. What is she so afraid I'll uncover? The question hangs in the air, heavy as the storm outside. The storm lingers into morning, leaving the apartment washed in a pale, uneasy light. I waked to the sound of Lena pacing in the kitchen, her steps quick, uneven, carrying the same fear that kept me awake through the night. She avoids looking at me, pretending to read messages on her new borrowed phone, but her fingers tremble when she thinks I'm not watching. I ask her again if something happened yesterday, something she didn't say. She freezes, breath catching, and for a moment I see the truth press against her lips before she forces it back down. The silence feels heavier in daylight, stripped of shadows, showing everything she can't hide. She says she's fine, but her voice is too soft, as if speaking any louder might break her. I wonder if she's protecting herself, or protecting me from something far worse. Lena moves through the apartment with a careful calm that feels forced, like every action has been rehearsed. She asks if I want breakfast, but her voice falters on the last word, and she turns away before I can answer. The sound of utensils clinking is too sharp, too fast, as though she's trying to drown out her own thoughts. I step behind her, close enough to feel the tension in her shoulders. When I ask again what's wrong, she whispers that she's just tired, but the lie falls apart under the weight of her shaking breath. I reach out, touch her arm gently, and she stiffens like the contact burns. Something inside her is unraveling, and she's fighting to keep it from spilling out. I don't know if I should push, or if pushing will make everything collapse. The rain slows, leaving the world outside quiet, but inside the silence grows heavier. Lena sits on the edge of the couch, staring at the floor, as if searching for an answer she's afraid to find. I sit across from her, watching the steady rise and fall of her breath, the way she clutches the hem of her shirt like she's holding onto something fragile. I tell her that whatever it is, I can handle it, but she shakes her head instantly, eyes wide with fear. She whispers that she didn't mean for any of this to happen, that she thought she could fix it before I noticed. My pulse quickens, but I force my voice steady as I ask what she means. She opens her mouth, closes it, then whispers that someone contacted her last night, someone she hoped she'd never hear from again. And suddenly, the room feels colder than the storm outside. And say, her words hang in the air like a wound reopened. I ask who contacted her, but she shakes her head again, eyes glistening with fear she can't hide. She whispers that she didn't want him to know where she lived, that she never wanted him in her life again. My stomach tightens, each clue narrowing toward a truth I don't want to imagine. She says she tried to ignore the messages, but he kept calling, kept insisting he needed to talk to her urgently. The guilt in her voice cuts deeper than the storm's cold ever could. I tell her she should have come to me, but she steps back, hugging herself, as if protecting something fragile inside her. She finally whispers that she was afraid of how I'd react. Not because she didn't trust me, but because she knew this wasn't something I could simply forgive. I stepped closer, voice soft, telling her I need to know the truth, not the version she thinks will hurt me least. She closes her eyes, breath trembling, and for a moment I see the weight she has carried long before last night. When she finally speaks, her voice cracks. She says the man who called isn't some stranger. He's someone she used to trust, someone who betrayed her in ways she never told me about. My heart pounds, anger mixing with fear, because I can feel the rest of the truth coming, heavy enough to split the room in two. She whispers that she thought she escaped him, thought the past was gone. But last night's call proved it isn't finished. And then she says the part that chills me. He said he's coming here. The world seems to go silent, as if even the storm is holding its breath. The air feels heavier than the storm that passed, settling between us like a warning neither of us can ignore. Lena sits curled at the edge of the couch, knees drawn up as if bracing for impact, while I stand frozen, replaying her words. Has coming here. The room seems smaller, tighter, every shadow stretching with the weight of what she hasn't told me. I watch her fingers twist the fabric of her sleeve, the way her breath stumbles each time she tries to speak. She says he used to control everything she did, that she spent years learning to breathe without fear, and now that fear is clawing its way back. I feel anger rising in my chest, but beneath it sits something colder. Helplessness. I tell her we'll face it together, but she looks at me with eyes filled with guilt, like she believes she's pulling me into a fire she started. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The silence feels like a line we're both afraid to cross, and I wonder if the man who's coming has already stolen more from her than I ever realized. Lena finally uncurls herself and rises slowly, as if her legs have forgotten how to hold her. I watch her pace the room, each step revealing a tremor she tries to hide. She tells me she changed her number 3 times, blocked him everywhere, even moved apartments hoping distance would bury him in the past. But last night's call proved that he never stopped looking. I ask how he found her, but she shakes her head, hugging her arms as though trying to hold herself together. She whispers that he always finds a way, and the dread in her voice makes my skin crawl. I tell her she isn't alone anymore, but she flinches as if the promise hurts. I can feel the moment shifting, tightening, as if the walls themselves know something dangerous is getting closer. And somewhere deep inside, a question pulls at me. How far will he go to take back what he thinks he owns? The hours pass slowly, each minute stretching with a tension that settles deep in my chest. Lena sits at the small dining table, staring at her borrowed phone like it might explode. I move closer, trying to read the fear in her eyes. But she avoids my gaze, whispering that she doesn't want me involved. The words slice more than she intends, leaving a cold ache in my stomach. I tell her it's too late for that. Her fear became mine the moment she told me the truth. She closes her eyes, shrugging her shoulders as though carrying a weight she knows she cannot escape. The apartment feels like a trap, each shadow a reminder that someone dangerous is moving closer. Part of me wants to demand answers, but the other part knows pushing her will only push her deeper into whatever darkness she's been running from. She opens her eyes again, and in them I see a truth she hasn't spoken yet. Something has already happened. Something she hasn't dared to admit. I ask her to tell me everything. No more half-truths. No more hiding. She hesitates, gripping the edge of the chair so tightly, her knuckles pale. Her voice barely rises above a whisper as she explains the last message he sent before her phone shattered. It wasn't just a threat or a demand. It was a photograph, taken from outside our building. My breath catches and a cold rush sweeps through me. She says she panicked, dropped the phone, and when she heard a noise outside the door, she thought he was already here. That's why she lied, why she tried to pretend everything was fine. She didn't want to believe the nightmare she escaped had found her again. I stand there frozen, realizing the danger isn't somewhere far away. It's circling us already. And the worst part is the way she looks at me, as if she blames herself for bringing it to our doorstep. Lena rises slowly, pacing again, but this time there's something different in her movement. A desperation sharpened by fear. She says she doesn't want to drag me into this, that he's dangerous, unpredictable, the kind of person who enjoys breaking what he cannot control. I step in front of her, gently stopping her. I tell her she doesn't get to face this alone. Not anymore. Her eyes fill with tears, and for the first time, she lets them fall, her voice cracking as she admits something she's been holding back. She says this isn't just fear of him returning. It's fear of what he knows, fear of what he might expose. My pulse pounds, but I don't look away. I ask her what she means, and she clutches her hands to her chest as though bracing for impact. She whispers 3 words that make the world tilt beneath me. He knows everything. And suddenly the room feels colder, as if the next truth she speaks might destroy everything we have left. The room feels frozen after Lena's confession, as though the air itself refuses to move. She sits at the edge of the couch, hands clasped against her chest, like she's holding back something that might tear her apart. I kneel in front of her, trying to steady my voice while inside everything trembles. Everything could mean anything. Something from before we met, something she hid out of fear, or something she thought would break us. Her breathing grows shallow, eyes darting, as if expecting the past to crash through the door at any second. I tell her she's safe, but even hearing the words aloud feels fragile, like a lie meant to calm a child. She whispers that he threatened her before, that he always warned he'd destroy anyone who tried to replace him. The word replace coils in my mind like venom. I take her hands, feeling how cold her fingers have become. Outside, wind rattles the windows, but nothing is louder than the question forming silently between us. What exactly does he know? Lena pulls her hands away and rises abruptly, pacing the room with a frantic energy that makes every step feel like a countdown. She says she tried to warn me before, tried to tell me pieces of the truth, but every time she opened her mouth, she could feel his voice in her head telling her to stay silent. I follow her movements, watching her clutch her elbows as if holding herself together with sheer will. She says he wasn't just controlling, he was calculating, always watching for weakness, always collecting secrets. I ask her what he thinks he has on her, and she stops mid-step, shoulders stiffening as though the memory itself hurts. She whispers that she told him something once, something she never told anyone else, something she fears he might twist and use to destroy everything she's built. Her breath shudders, and for a moment she seems smaller, younger, like someone fighting a shadow they can't outrun. I tell her she doesn't have to face this alone, but I feel it. There's more she still hasn't said. She finally stops pacing and leans against the window, staring out as if expecting a shadow to appear on the street below. I move beside her, keeping a careful distance, giving her room to breathe. She whispers that she met him when she was younger, when she mistook obsession for love. He isolated her, pushed her away from everyone, convinced her she owed him loyalty. I listen, feeling anger simmer beneath my ribs, but she continues before I can speak. She says he kept a journal filled with things she told him in confidence, fears, mistakes, moments of weakness, and used them as leverage whenever she tried to leave. I ask whether he still has it, and she nods slowly, her reflection trembling in the window glass. Fear pulses through her voice when she says he once threatened to send everything to the people she cared about. My stomach twists. If he still has that journal, he's capable of anything. And for the first time, I realize the danger isn't abstract. It's personal, deliberate, aimed like a weapon. The silence between us thickens until she finally turns and looks at me, eyes swollen with fear and exhaustion. She says she didn't tell me sooner because she didn't want her past to poison what we had. But the truth she feared is already bleeding into the present. I tell her that nothing she could say would make me walk away, but she shakes her head, stepping back as though she doesn't believe she deserves comfort. She whispers that he told her once that if she ever tried to be happy without him, he'd make sure she regretted it. The cruelty of the memory makes her voice crack. I take a step closer, steadying my breath, trying not to collapse under the weight of my own fury. I tell her he doesn't get to control her anymore. Not her choices, not her future, not her fear. But even as I say it, a tightness coils in my chest. Because the truth is simple and terrifying. He's already affecting us. And he's not even here yet. Lena sinks onto the couch again, her breathing shaky, her hands trembling in her lap. I sit beside her, close but not touching, waiting for her to speak. After a long pause, she whispers that there's one more thing, something he held over her that she never thought she'd have to confess. My pulse quickens. But I stay silent, letting her gather courage. She stares at the floor, eyes unfocused, as if seeing a memory she wishes she could erase. She says he once forced her into something she didn't want, something she carries guilt for, even though it wasn't her fault. She never told anyone, not even the people she trusted most, because he made her believe no one would understand. Her voice breaks, and I feel the weight of her pain settle deep in my chest. I move closer, slowly, and she doesn't pull away this time. I tell her she isn't alone. Not now. Not now. But even as I say it, a cold realization settles over me. The man who hurt her still believes he has a claim on her life. And if he's truly coming here, nothing about this is over. The afternoon light fades slowly, sinking the apartment into a quiet tension that feels almost too calm, like the world is holding its breath before something breaks. Lena sits near the window, her fingers tapping a frantic rhythm against her thigh, her eyes locked on the street below as if expecting a ghost to rise from the pavement. I stand behind her, watching the way her shoulders tighten with every passing car. She whispers that she hasn't felt this scared in years, that every sound makes her skin crawl, because it reminds her of how he used to appear without warning. I tell her we'll get through this, but she shakes her head, saying he doesn't stop. He never stops. The words hang in the air like a prophecy. I want to promise her safety, but fear curls deep in my stomach, whispering its own warning. Because now it's not just her past coming back. It's coming for both of us. Lena pulls herself away from the window and moves toward the kitchen, but her steps wobble as if fear has drained her strength. I follow, watching her grip the counter like she needs something solid to keep from collapsing. She says he used to send her messages describing what she was wearing, where she stood, how she breathed. Details he shouldn't have known unless he was watching. The memory makes her voice quiver. I feel anger coil tight beneath my ribs, a heat that rises with every word she forces out. She says she spent years believing she was finally free, and now one call has undone everything. I place a hand gently on her back, and though she flinches at the contact, she doesn't move away. I whisper that she isn't alone anymore. But even as I say it, I sense a deeper truth pressing behind her trembling silence. She believes he's already closer than we think. The silence grows heavier as the evening settles in, thickening the air with a lingering tension neither of us can shake. Lena steps into the living room and sits on the floor beside the coffee table, pulling her knees up as if trying to shrink into herself. I sit across from her, watching the way her breathing falters every time her phone screen lights up, even though it's only random app notifications. She whispers that she knows what he wants, that he never wanted her back. He wanted control. He wanted to prove she couldn't escape him. I ask quietly what he might do next, and her eyes drift toward the door, her voice trembling as she says she doesn't know. But whatever it is, he'll make sure she feels power. I reach out, placing my hand over hers, and this time she doesn't pull away. But her fingers remain cold, as if fear has seeped into her bones. Night creeps in fast, swallowing the last of the daylight, turning the apartment into a fragile haven lit only by the warm glow of a single lamp. Lena stands near the hallway, arms wrapped tightly around herself, whispering that she can't shake the feeling he's already watching. I step closer, asking what makes her think that, and she says it's the silence. The same silence she used to feel right before he'd show up without warning. She presses her back against the wall, trembling, saying she can still hear his voice in her mind, telling her she doesn't deserve peace. My chest tightens with anger, but I swallow it, reaching out and assuring her she's safe here. Yet even as I speak, the stillness of the apartment feels unnatural, as if the darkness outside is listening. The apartment grows eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that sharpens every sound, every creak, every shift of air, every distant noise from the street. Lena sits beside me on the couch, trembling, her eyes fixed on the door as if expecting it to burst open. I wrap an arm around her shoulders, and she finally leans into me, her breath unsteady against my chest. She whispers that she's terrified. Hell hurt me to punish her. That he never cared who got caught in his anger as long as he proved he was in control. I tell her I'm not afraid, even though fear twists in my stomach like a tightening rope. She presses her forehead against my shoulder, voice cracking as she says something that chills me. He doesn't just want to ruin my life. He wants to ruin yours too. The room feels colder. The stakes feel higher. And for the first time, I realize we may already be standing in the calm before something dangerous finally arrives. Night settles thick and heavy, pressing against the windows like something alive trying to get in. Lena sits curled on the couch, her knees tight against her chest, while I pace the room with restless steps I can't control. Every sound outside makes her flinch, every car door, every distant voice, every shifting shadow. I ask if she wants to leave for the night, but she shakes her head, whispering that running won't stop him. Her voice is thin, almost breaking as she says he always finds a way, that he's probably watching already. The thought sends a chill crawling down my spine. I stop pacing and sit beside her, forcing my breath steady even though fear twists in my chest. She looks at me with eyes full of guilt, whispering that she never meant to drag me into a nightmare she barely survived. I tell her she didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to stand with her. But inside, I can feel a quiet dread growing. The sense that something is coming. Something we aren't ready for. Lena moves to the kitchen, her footsteps slow and fragile, as if every step risks shattering what little strength she has left. I follow her, but she keeps her eyes low, avoiding my gaze as she grips the edge of the counter to steady herself. She whispers that she wants to tell me everything, every detail she's hidden, every fear she buried, but she's terrified that once she speaks it aloud, it will all become real again. I step closer, gently touching her arm, and she exhales a shaky breath that trembles through her entire body. She says he took more from her than she ever admitted, that he didn't just hurt her. He convinced her she deserved the hurt. The words hit me like a punch, rage simmering beneath my skin, but I keep my voice soft. I tell her she's not the person he convinced her she was. Her eyes fill with tears, and for a moment I see the woman she's fighting to become: strong, terrified, but finally willing to let herself be seen. The night deepens, turning the apartment into a quiet shell where fear echoes louder than any sound. We sit across from each other at the dining table, the small overhead light casting a faint halo around us. Lena keeps her gaze lowered, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt as she tries to speak. She whispers that the journal he kept, the one filled with her secrets, contained more than memories. It contained something he made her confess, something she never wanted anyone to know. Her voice cracks as she says he recorded her breaking, recorded moments she didn't even remember because fear had turned everything into a blur. My heart clenches, anger and grief rising like a wave I struggle to control. I tell her gently that none of what he forced from her defines who she is now. She finally looks up, eyes shining with a fragile hope she barely believes it. But beneath that hope, I sense a fear even deeper. The fear that whatever he has, whatever he recorded, might already be in motion. A sudden knock breaks the silence. Sharp, unexpected, too precise to be random. Lena freezes instantly, her eyes widening with terror as the sound echoes through the apartment. I stand slowly, pulse pounding, every nerve stretching tight. The knock comes again, this time harder, and Lena grips my arm as if anchoring herself. I tell her to stay behind me, though my voice trembles despite trying to sound steady. We move toward the hallway, each step filled with dread, the door looming like a threat. She whispers that he used to knock like that. 3 taps, then silence, just to remind her he could appear whenever he wanted. I swallow hard as the 3rd knock hits the wood, the exact rhythm she described. The room spins with fear, and Lena's nails dig into my skin. I don't know who's on the other side of the door, but everything inside me screams that opening it might change our lives forever. The apartment feels suffocatingly still as the final knock fades into silence. Lena's breath stutters, her fingers trembling against my arm as we stand frozen, waiting for something, anything, to happen next. When no voice follows, no footsteps retreat, the silence becomes even more ominous. I move slowly toward the peephole, while Lena whispers for me not to look, fear cracking each word. But I have to. I lean in, heart pounding so loud it fills my ears. At first, I see nothing, just the dim hallway outside. Then, barely visible in the corner of the frame, the shape of a man stands motionless, his head lowered, his shoulders still. A cold chill sweeps through my entire body. I step back, breath sharp, and Lena reads the truth in my eyes before I speak. Wow. Tears spill down her cheeks as she whispers, "It's him." The world narrows to a single terrifying truth. He's not coming. He's already here. The silence after Lena's whisper feels like a blade pressed to the room's throat. I keep my body between her and the door, but my breath shakes despite trying to stay calm. She clings to my arm, her nails cold against my skin, and her entire frame trembling. I tell her we'll be okay, but the lie tastes sharp on my tongue. She whispers that he never shows himself unless he wants something. That if he's standing out there now, It means he's ready to take back the control she stole from him. A shiver crawls along my spine. I edge toward the window, careful not to make noise, and pull the curtain barely an inch. Down on the street, a figure lingers near the lamppost, face hidden, shoulders still, like a shadow waiting for permission to move. Lena's breath catches behind me. I let the curtain fall, heart pounding so hard it hurts. She whispers, "He won't leave." And I feel it too. The growing sense that tonight is the beginning of something we can't outrun. Lena backs away from the door, breathing faster. Her hands shaking so violently, she has to hold them against her chest. I lock the deadbolt even though I know it won't stop someone determined enough. She stammers that he used to warn her this would happen, that one day he'd show up and fix everything. I feel rage and fear collide in my chest, but I keep my voice steady, telling her we're calling the police. Her head snaps up, panic flooding her face as she shakes her head. She says he used to work with people who knew how to make things disappear. Complaints, evidence, fear itself. My stomach knots. She steps closer, gripping my shirt, whispering that he'll twist everything until it looks like she's the one losing control. I take her hands, grounding her trembling fingers into mine. I tell her this time is different. She's not alone. But even as the words leave my mouth, footsteps echo faintly in the hallway outside. The footsteps stop directly in front of the door. Lena gasps, covering her mouth to muffle the sound, her entire body curling inward. I step toward the hallway, every muscle in my body electric with fear. A shadow shifts under the doorframe, slow and deliberate, as if he's listening, waiting. I whisper for Lena to get behind the couch, and she obeys, crawling quietly across the floor. Her breath coming in shallow bursts. The shadow remains motionless. I feel my heartbeat thunder through my chest as I grab the closest thing that could serve as a weapon, a metal lamp, heavy and cold in my hand. The air thickens, heavy enough to choke on. Then, suddenly, a low, deliberate drag of fingers trails across the door, slow and taunting. Lena lets out a quiet sob. I tighten my grip on the lamp, bracing myself. Whoever he is, he wants us to know he's not going anywhere. The dragging sound stops. The silence that follows is worse, thick, electric, waiting to snap. Lena's muffled breathing breaks through the tension, her body trembling as she whispers my name, like it's a prayer. I move closer to her, crouching beside her for a moment, placing a steady hand on her back. She feels ice cold, like fear has drained the warmth from her skin. I whisper that I'm here, that he won't touch her again, even though I'm not sure I believe my own certainty. Her eyes lift to mine, glassy and terrified, and she whispers something I wasn't prepared for. He's not here for me. He's here for you. My breath stutters, the words hitting harder than any knock. She says he knows about us, that he's seen us together, that he's furious she found someone else. I stare at the door, my pulse hammering, realizing the nightmare she escaped has now wrapped itself around both of us. He isn't just reclaiming control, he's declaring war. A final knock hits the door, louder, sharper, the kind of knock that demands an answer. Lena buries her face against my shoulder, shaking uncontrollably. I hold her tightly, my heart pounding like it's trying to break free from my chest. The knock comes again, followed by a voice, calm, cold, and far too close. He says her name first. Then he says mine. Hearing my name from a man I've never met sends a freezing ripple down my spine. Lena pulls back, horror stretched across her face as she realizes what I do. He's been watching us longer than we ever suspected. I stand slowly, pulling her up with me, holding her hand so tightly it almost hurts. The voice on the other side of the door speaks again, low and threatening, promising that tonight is only the beginning. Lena's breath breaks, my jaw clenches, and for the first time I understand what we're facing. This isn't a visit. It's an invasion.